Christian. I'm an Indigenous Studies major, political science minor with an emphasis in pre-law. I'm either a junior or a senior. This podcast is for Nation Building and Leadership, which is a class for Indigenous Studies through Nikki Michael. Nikki Michael is a Lenape enrolled band member and a tribal council woman for her tribe. I guess we can go around the room and introduce ourselves. And I'm a descendant from the Leech Lake Band. And do you want to go next?
I'm RuthAnn Donnell Brown, and I am a senior graduating in May this year. And I am from Red Lake, a band member of Red Lake Reservation. And yeah, I'm signed on for the podcast.
Bonjour, I'm Alicia Bowstring, senior this year, Indigenous Studies is my major, Ojibwe minor. I can't wait to graduate, and this is for our Leadership and Nationhood class.
So I'm Serena Graves, and I am a junior at Bemidji State, majoring in Indigenous Studies, minoring in Ojibwe language. I was born and raised in Red Lake, went to school there, graduated from high school there, still live there. I live in Redby, actually, not Red Lake. But yeah, I graduate next May. I'm done with my requirements in the fall, and yeah.
Hello, I'm, Ernest Joseph Oppegaard-Peltier III, or Joey for short. I am a member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa over in North Dakota, and also a community organizer here in Bemidji. And I'm here to also help give input to the podcast.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, great. I want to welcome all of you here and thank you for this. And I think this podcast is going to be awesome. I think we'll do really good things and talk about some really good things. So I guess just to break it down a little bit, I'm kind of winging it here, but we definitely plan on doing several different episodes. I think we want to do 20-minute episodes, maybe drop an episode a week.
Did we establish that this is for an assignment for nation building?
Yeah, I think we did.
Sorry, I forgot if we did.
Nope, it's fine, and we'll probably reiterate a lot of the things that we say several different times throughout the podcast, not even just in one episode. I feel like, being that we're talking specifically about nation building and leadership, that it's all going to tie into each other like one podcast after another. And I mean, nation building and leadership encompasses like literally everything that has to do with tribal nations and tribal governments, and that's including like economic development, self-determination. Yeah, exactly. It's a thing. It's a thing.
Know.
So what went on recently? So I held a Bernie Sanders event, Students for Bernie, and it was really intimidating because not only being a woman, but being Native and being from Red Lake, it was already like a scary experience. And then walking around campus and seeing my signs removed from places in campus, and then seeing Trump 2020 written on it. It wasn't even about politics. It was just the fact that there was like blatant disrespect toward property, which if you have a sign up on campus, I feel like that's property. And the fact that students here at the university took it upon themselves to go and write on property. It was really hard because it made me so mad, but then at the same time, when you're like organizing that type of thing, you can't just sit around being mad, and you have to just keep going with the flow. And so it was a really great turnout. We had really good educational based discussions about funding for Bernie's policies, kind of where the state of our climate is at, the reason why young people should vote and why our votes are important and why everybody should vote and how to vote, kind of. So it was a really good thing, but the fact that happened was so because even though I don't support Trump, I would never go deliberately out of my way to write on something that a student was organizing. Right. So it was just really hard.
Disheartening a little bit. Like yeah, that's wrong. And I mean, but that just goes to show you the political climate on campus and just in our country today, like, and which severely affects Native nations specifically, like due to racial policy implementations, like trying to defund our tribal health systems and our tribal colleges and attacking our gaming and which in fact most tribes use to rely on actually to fund their entire governments on top of federal grants. So like yeah, it's difficult, and I'm sorry that happened to your poster. That is wrong. It's that would piss me off too.
I think it's a part of leadership that when you take the role of a leadership position, you have to be able to take the hits and keep moving. And I think that was like the biggest lesson I learned from that, because I was so pissed off. Like, I'm from Red Lake. Like you don't disrespect people like that blatantly. So to see it, to feel it, and then just have to keep moving and not let it like dismantle the whole event and the purpose of it was like that. I think is like what you can gain from experiences like that. So
I was gonna say.
So I was at your event and you were motivational. Honestly, it made me proud of our culture to see you up there leading. And as a leader myself within our community, and honestly, I'm a new transplant over here into Bemidji from North Dakota. I hate to say it, but we have to grow a thicker skin. That's what it takes to be in politics nowadays, and that's honestly how it's always been. Is we had to just suck it up and keep on going what we do. And I don't mean suck it up. I mean we're pissed. We can be pissed. We can show that we're pissed. And I'm glad that you pointed that out at the meeting, that's what happened, and that you're just flustered and angry about it. We can't hide who we are, and you didn't. You led all of us that the other day, and I was very proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, happy.
I mean, but it's good though. I mean, it's good because you did good work, and that's where we should bring our emotions, our frustrations when people piss us off. We don't want to sit there and start attacking them and pulling down their Trump posters and writing Bernie on their Trump posters. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take that emotion and we're gonna direct it into something productive. We're gonna hold more Bernie rallies. We're gonna educate people more. We're gonna do what we can. And I guess that's great, because that leads me into like all the different topics that we're going to discuss here during the podcast. I have a huge list here, so we plan to do in other episodes. We plan to interview several people on campus, including our professor Nikki Michael, our executive director here at Bemidji State University at the American Indian Resource Center, Chrissy Cook, and also a former Red Lake Nation chairman, Buck Jourdain. And we're going to discuss several topics. We're going to talk about education, healthcare, sovereignty, culture, land-based, language revitalization. So maybe we could even talk to Anton Troyer, and maybe he could come interview and talk about language revitalization a little bit. We can talk about blood quantum and the changing of enrollment, and i.e. so like in Red Lake, they just changed their enrollment sustainability, cultural resource management, history, so mineral rights even, and I'm not talking about like just like wild rice and trees and plants and stuff like that, but I'm also talking about like oil. Even if we don't have like oil in the land, we do have pipelines that run through our land with oil, and I don't understand why we're not getting paid to do that. We're not getting paid for these people to pump hundreds of thousands of barrels through our land and endanger our natural resources. And then I had a couple of questions too, even that we could go off on tangents, and maybe that's even where we start with this first podcast. I feel like this is more like of an introduction, and this is us just, gaining the ropes, trying to figure out how we're going to do this. And so my couple of questions is like, how do we move into the future, balancing economic development with an economic system that specifically exploits indigenous populations, communities, and nations? And then And how can we decolonize? How do we decolonize our people? And is decolonization even possible? And we might even have to change our definition of decolonization to
Right.
fit specific indigenous communities, because Red Lake's going to be different than Leech Lake. And even just thinking about Red Lake, since that's what we're closest to right now at BSU, what if we're going to have to change our definition of decolonization for Red Lake? I think it's going to have to be changed for each community in Red Lake, and that goes throughout all of the Native communities. So like what happens in Red Bee and how they feel decolonization can work for them is going to be different than what the people in Panema think is
sure.
decolonization, and
For
what's going to
sure.
fix or what's going to decolonize them. And so is that something that's possible? Even is decolonization
But
possible
yeah.
in Native nations?
But I think the redefining it
Mhm.
is probably
A good start anyway, and defining it to each community. Is there anything you guys want to jump on the train of, like maybe something Buck was talking about today, or something that's
just,
happened?
when he talked about the school shooting, and I actually kind of felt really kind of
Oh, teary-eyed. I
Yeah,
started to
I
tear
did
up a little bit too.
because
That was
the
intense.
security guard Derek Brun was my cousin, was my little cousin. His mom and my mom were sisters, and so it was really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to agree because it was my husband's first year working in law enforcement for Leech Lake, and he got called up there to help, sit on the,
Right.
perimeter, and it's just scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was in elementary school at Red Lake when that happened, and like we got dismissed from school for a few weeks, and then when we went back, we had to go through metal detectors we never did before, and just the whole dynamic of Red Lake Elementary changed for me after that, and it just brought back all those feelings.
Can we describe the event? Sorry, I'm new into the area. What happened? And can someone describe to me who Buck is?
Buck Jourdain is
Chairman.
a former chairman of
Of
Red
Red
Lake
Lake.
Nation. He was elected in 2004, I believe he said, and he sat on council for 10 years.
Yes.
About 10 years, and he's. I'm not going to say that he's a bad person because I don't necessarily know him. I'm not from Red Lake and I wasn't able to vote for him, but I do know that I hear there's two sides to every coin, and there's two stories to every situation. And I'm actually really excited to discuss with the people that I live with, because most of them are Red Lakers, and they all have their own opinion about Buck Jourdain, and not that will sway my opinion, because he gave a really heartfelt hour-long discussion and presentation earlier this morning. Yes, at 10 o'clock we
What
had
was it for?
for our nation building and leadership class,
Okay.
and which is what this podcast is about and for. And he did that's the topic of conversation right now, is the Red Lake shooting. So in what year was it?
2005.
2005, Red Lake. There was an active school shooting at Red Lake High School, and in fact, Lance Crow, my best friend's boyfriend and baby's father, he was in the shooting, and he was shot 6 times, I think, and his entire classroom was murdered. Like, he laid pretending to be dead while this active shooter was going around classrooms and actively shooting people with guns that he got from his father or grandfather, who was a police
He
officer.
was 16 years old. He had killed his grandparents that morning.
Yep.
And made his way to the school, and then the events unfolded from there.
And okay, so how many passed away in that event?
10, I believe.
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
Including
them.
Yeah.
And what were the changes that happened to the school after that?
We got metal detectors. I remember for the first, I think it was probably the first week we had I don't know, they weren't FBI agents, but they were definitely maybe not even SWAT, but I remember being escorted from my classroom to the bathroom, and so we had metal detectors. I couldn't have a backpack that wasn't see-through. I couldn't have he would get searched down as children. So all
Very institutionalized.
Very institutional, and it wasn't like that before. And now we have security. We have metal detectors everywhere in our schools still to this day. So.
But the security wise, it toned down in the years. Just not much, but just a bit.
I think a little bit, but you still have to go through a metal detector for every school that you go into in Red Lake. And there are active security guards, multiple.
And I assume cameras also.
All, yep.
Okay.
So
There was a security guard too at the time, wasn't it? And he lost his life.
Yeah, that was Ruth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
RuthAnn's
Ruth.
that was
cousin.
what RuthAnn was saying.
Well, and it affected all the schools in the area. Like every school went into lockdown, and Cass Lake got metal detectors and improved their security systems. And Cass Lake actually has several armed police officers on property at all times now, and it. We were going through active shooter drills and I mean regularly, like weekly we were going through them. And this was even I moved to Cass Lake in 2007, 2008, 2006, somewhere around there. I was in 8th grade, and even at that point, years later after the active shooter in Red Lake, like we were still doing active shooter drills. And it was because after that it was like Columbine and all these other school shootings that happened across the nation, and so obviously like gun violence is obviously a huge thing in our country today, but it's an even bigger thing in Indian country, and people don't realize that or understand that, and how much it affects us specifically. And I think that's great that we're bringing that up, because it is something that needs to be discussed and talked about and brought up.
And I want to say that I know like law enforcement and first responders and community members, they attend ALICE training, it's called. And the acronym is Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. And I know recently they just had one, and that's what they go into the schools in the summertime and practice. Like they actually have actors portraying a school shooter or whatever.
Oh, really?
That's traumatizing.
That is traumatizing.
Yeah, that's scary. And I mean, it's sad that we have to do stuff like that. Like, and it all goes back down, like you guys were talking about, like institutionalizing and how we've institutionalized our education system, and we don't focus on the root of the problem, which is like mental health and bullying,
and accessibility to mental health.
Right, accessibility to mental health and
healthcare,
right. Well, and then the fact that like we just don't talk about these situations prior to them happening. Like once it's happened, it's all we talk about. But where was the conversation months prior to this? Because this, from what I hear here, he was a homeschooled student, but because he was severely bullied at Red Lake School and was picked on and treated like shit, and that's usually how it always goes down, is these active shooters in schools were heavily bullied by their peers, and they just mentally health, they snap, and that's why it happens. And so on top of our mental health we need to deal with, but we also need to deal with the fact that people are literally bullying students into wanting to shoot you. Like I don't understand. Like,
they bully the kids enough for them to try to commit suicide too.
Yep, and that's another huge thing in Native nations. In Indian countries specifically, is we have the highest suicide rate of teens of any other race, and stuff like that just isn't talked about.
Well, we brought up at the Bernie thing the other day, we were saying like how the Daniel Roof in the Charleston shooting where he went into that church, he legally purchased an assault rifle legally from a private dealer, and I think that's a huge thing that needs to be addressed. And for the Red Lake shooting, he got the guns from his grandfather, who was a police officer, so that's like a completely different thing. But I feel like for even the Las Vegas shooting, that doesn't pertain to education, but it's still mass shooting
and a mental health thing.
He legally bought assault rifles that are designed to murder people. They're not designed for hunting or fishing or your Second Amendment right. They're designed for military purposes to murder. And the fact that we can legally get our hands on those, and there's like 400 million currently in the country, is like, I don't know, mind-boggling. Yeah, and we're not. And a lot of Republicans will argue that it's their Second Amendment right, which I agree with. It is your Second Amendment right, but also where do we draw the line in like people are, yeah.
Well, where do your rights end and mine begin?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Right.
at that point, like, because I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment as well, but where do your rights end and mine begin? I'm scared for my life, my children's life. I mean, I don't have kids, but my little brothers, my niece, my nephews, my friends' children's, your guys' children. Like, there's no reason why we should own assault rifles in this country.
And then, you know, what's really sad is, I don't know if this is factual or how factual it is. Like, a person can legally own 50-some guns. 50
Oh,
guns.
nope, it's factual.
You know, it's
you
like,
can.
That's obscene.
Legally.
Yeah.
There are people who have stockpiles of guns and ammunition.
Nobody sees anything wrong with it. Like, what do you need all that for?
And especially the shooting, was it in Milwaukee? The governor was like, right before that shooting happened, was like, did you guys read about that?
Yeah.
The governor was like trying to push for a gun law right before, like pleading or like some type of gun control. And then that happened like 2 hours later where those people were murdered.
Okay, change me, but on the guns aspect, the 50-some guns, you know, that's mostly collectors, and those are not copies of the same gun in my eyes that I see. I could be wrong, but it's in like different eras and different versions of different guns, and they're just collecting like it's a toy, which I understand that's still gross to say a killing weapon is a toy, but I see it like that, and I disagree. I don't think we should have access to AK weapons and assault. Did you say that?
That's what I said.
Yeah.
We should not have access to AK-47s and AR-15s and assault weapons.
Right.
Weapons designed specifically to kill human beings in war. The regular populace should not have access
Even
to
for
it.
hunting.
So
No, it's not. That's what shotguns and rifles are
Yes.
for.
Right.
I went out shooting for my second time technically, but first time this past fall, and I got to shoot my first AK, and I felt the power. You know, you feel the power when you're shooting that weapon,
Scary.
and it's gross. But then you realize that's a lot of power in a very short amount of time. That's a lot of killing power in a lot of short amount of time. And we're shooting at trees, and we annihilated that tree by the end of the day, which is sad to say. But between all of us shooting at that tree, between different amount of guns. But that AK, I can understand when we want to regulate guns, we want to take away those automatic, semi-automatic rifles, because that's a lot of killing power in a short amount of time that there's no way that an average officer or security guard is going to want to walk into that, or is going to honestly walk into it.
Holding a little 9mm? Nope, you're not getting me to go into no AR-15 active shooter nowhere. Sorry.
What was it? The shooting in Florida a couple years back, there was lawsuits out there because the officers that responded refused to actually go into the school itself and protect the students. And honestly, we don't pay our officers enough to actually put them in that kind of risk. We don't offer them health care, we don't offer them mental health care, and we don't offer them like lifetime or what is it? If they pass away or if they get damaged, disability, they're all suffering. They're all paying out of their own pockets. We should not put our police officers in that kind of risk. And honestly, I'm for taking away, or not. I'm for the logical gun control legislation. I'm not for us asking to take guns away. I'd rather ask the manufacturers to stop producing those weapons.
Well, and I think one thing, if you're going to legally buy a gun, I think that if you do a background check, you should be able to provide records that showcase that you beat your wife and that you've shown violence in your record. I think before you buy a gun, you shouldn't be able to have a gun.
I'd even go as far as saying domestic or animal cruelty.
Oh yeah,
If you
same.
get caught,
Absolutely.
All of
dog,
that,
all
and
of that.
it's not taking away your guns. Like if you're okay to have a gun, you're mentally stable. You don't beat women. You don't kill animals for fun and like torturous ways. I don't think you should have a gun.
It's locked, I think. Oh no, it's not. But yeah, I think I agree with all that, and I feel like if I need a license to drive a car, you need a license to fly a plane. You need extensive training, in fact, to fly a plane. Like, why can I go to Walmart and buy an AR-15? Like, why?
Oh, can you?
Yeah, you can. You can go to Walmart and buy all the guns. I don't know if you've ever been over in that section, but every gun you think is there, they're there. All types of guns. And then we have the gun show loophole, where if you go to a gun show, you buy a goddamn bazooka if that shit is sitting there.
Yeah, and you don't have to do a background check.
No, you don't have to do a background check. I don't need a license. I don't need a permit to carry. I don't need a mental health assessment. I don't need anything. All I need is the dollars to pay for it. And then bam, I own whatever I want.
So how do we address it? Is it a local issue, a federal, or a state issue, or a federal issue?
I think all levels. It needs to be addressed on all levels, locally, state, and federally. And specifically, the tribal nations need to be putting forth their own legislation and regulating that stuff their own. Because in my, correct me if I'm wrong, but Red Lake being the status of sovereign that they are, they have the right to buy military grade weaponry, and I'm talking like Black Hawk choppers and tanks and legit bazookas and stuff like that. Like they don't have. There's no because of their status as sovereign. Like they have that right to be able to buy military grade weaponry.
Is that fact?
I'm pretty sure that's fact. I would really like it if somebody could fact check me on that.
Any reservation can buy military surplus items. How far in depth that goes, I can't tell you.
I feel like that's something that we should discuss too.
Yeah. This is Bill Bowstring that was just speaking.
Alicia's husband.
Just walked in.
Like I work for Leech Lake, and like we used to be part of a program to where there was a website, it's open to the public where you can see extra surplus stuff that you can go and purchase, and like we've bought trucks from there, we've bought different equipment, generators, stuff for the reservation, straight from the military there. So I'm guessing if you look deep enough, there's probably everything and anything on that website.
Yeah.
Can we move back to a prior discussion? We were talking about mental health and how we don't have enough mental health access for our youth. I kind of want to expand on that. We've been actually pushing our mental health, our mental, I hate to say it like this, but our mentally disturbed youth from actually getting care, but going into the juvenile justice system itself. So rather than addressing our mental health issues with our youth, we've been actually incarcerating our youth within youth correctional centers, treatment centers, and juvenile detention centers. I want to say out of all the races between Black and Native American youth are the highest likely to be incarcerated for their juvenile offenses. And rather than addressing it that way, we should be addressing it in the mental health field so we can avoid all these aggressions and these activities, riskful activities that they participate with, resulting into school shootings and the bullying and aggressions like that.
Suicide, all that.
Like that goes back to like what type of psychiatrists we have working at IHS.
Yeah.
And who are these people making them feel comfortable? Do parents, guardians, aunts, uncles feel like they can tell their niece and nephews or sons or daughters to go up to a psychiatrist at IHS and feel comfortable with them? That's a big
and then
issue.
is that
No,
psychiatrists, are they going to be able to relate to where we come from and grew up?
No, because most likely they're going to be white.
Yeah.
Most likely they're going to be white, and they're not going to understand it. They're going to come at the situation from an academia point of view. They're not going to know the culture, the language, or the history, and they're not going to be able to relate with these Native children. So on top of that, we also need to be educating our own people in social work, in psychology, in psychiatry, in the medical field, in mental health profession. We need to be educating our people like this so that when it comes up to that point when we have troubled youth trying to find help, we don't have white people who have that colonized train of thought who cannot relate to us in any way, and in fact who just piss us off even more because you don't relate to me, and in fact your ancestors murdered mine. Why are you sitting here trying to help me? I don't relate to you in any way, shape, or form, and why do I want to talk to you? They're not going to want to talk to them. And on top of that, let's get into about how back in the 70s IHS was specifically illegally sterilizing Native women. You'd go in there for a minor surgery and they'd be taking out your uterus. and it's wrong. How in any way am I going to be able to trust you when the systemic hatred and genocide has just been implemented in every form of government on the reservation is just riddled with colonization.
Well, one starter I think is just to try to make it so we know that he's not going to get elected, and that's the first. That's the first positive to vote.
We all gotta vote.
We all gotta vote. The native vote. Yeah, and we all need to be pushing our friends and family to vote. Because I know there's 9 voting adults in the house that I live in, and each and every one of us will be voting. Whether that means I have to drag them out of that damn house by their hair, or they're gonna come willingly. Either way, they're voting. I don't care who they vote for the primary when it comes to the Democratic ticket. I don't care who they vote for as long as they vote. But come November, when we have a Democratic nominee, everybody needs to be voting for them. I don't give a fuck who it is, because I'd much prefer Sleepy Joe Biden or even billionaire Bloomberg before I'd prefer Trump.
I would just
just throw your hands in the air like, never mind, I lied. Well, all right. Well, this has been a great first episode. I know you guys have class here in like 3 minutes, so I appreciate everything. This is Christian and the Nation Building and Leadership podcast for Nikki Michael. And I can't wait to record our second one. This has actually been a great discussion, and I'm sad that it's already over.
That's good.
Yeah,
good guys.
Thanks.